What perplexed Joe when the most was why the former principal had sent him such a name card. Or perhaps it was not sent from the former principal at all. But if it wasn't from the former principal, who could have sent it to him? Joe Wen's mind was filled with questions, but an answer eluded him. He wanted to try the number on the name card to see if it could open the companion beast's chains, but he didn't dare to do so because of the unknown consequences. It would be fine if he couldn't open it, but if he did, he couldn't imagine what might happen. As Joe Wen was pondering over it, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. Cold sweat instantly oozed out of his back as though he had been targeted by a ferocious ghost. His gaze froze as he looked at the chained companion beast. Due to the silver hair covering the companion beast's face, Joe Wen couldn't see his eyes or facial features. However, he had a nagging feeling that a pair of eyes were staring at him from behind the waterfall like silver hair. Unsure if it was an illusion, Joe Wen even felt that the face behind the silver hair was smiling strangely at him. It's almost time. Let's get something to eat before I get Ah Shung to take you back. We can't affect your studying. Ouyang Lan led Joe Wen out of the room and locked the door. Standing outside the door, Joe Wen watched as the metal door slowly closed and slowly hid the companion beast's figure. However, Joe Wen still felt that he was staring at him and smiling. Joe Wen originally wanted to return to school immediately, but Ouyang Lan didn't want to hear anything of that. She had a meal with him before getting Ah Shung to take him back to school. During the meal, Joe Wen asked about the former principal. Ouyang Lan shared plenty of information with him, allowing him to gain a new understanding of the constantly smiling former principal. In the past, Joe Wen felt that the former principal was kind and had taken good care of him, but he didn't care much about the administrative matters. Back when he was the principal of Guide High School, he didn't really deal with matters. Everything was left to the vice principals while he spent his days planting flowers and taking care of his grass. He looked especially relaxed. However, from Ouyang Lan's recount, Joe Wen learned that the former principal was a very famous historian and had experienced the era of the dimensional storms. The Yin family's previous generation and the old principal were sworn brothers and even closed their ties through marriage. However, life was harsh on Ouyang Lan's ex-husband and he died too early. Although he learned quite a bit about the former principal, this wasn't of much help to him. The only information that helped him was when Ouyang Lan said that the former principal had indeed been invited to a dimensional zone in Zuolu County. As the magnetic interference was too overwhelming, it rendered electronic communications almost useless. It had been a long time since Ouyang Lan had received news from the former principal. Although such things happened often in the past, Ouyang Lan was worried as there was nothing she could do. After returning to his dorm, Joe Wen saw the antelope still sleeping on the couch. This left him disappointed. Lying in the bed, he took out his phone and continued grinding the dungeons. Like before, he first wiped out the various mini-bosses before committing suicide at Fire God platform. When he arrived at Tiger Cage Pass, Joe Wen saw a word engraved Demonized General appear. Delighted, he closed the distance and realized it was a paper Demonized General. Although the word engraved Demonized General was powerful, Joe Wen had the astral slash blade that restrained it. Soon, he killed the paper Demonized General and heard a chime. A dimensional crystal dropped. Primordial Energy Skill Crystal. Joe Wen was delighted when he saw the crystal's name. He impatiently picked up the Primordial Energy Skill Crystal and the blood-colored avatar successfully absorbed it. Absorbed paper Demonized General Crystal. Attained Astral Suction Palm. Joe Wen had longed for the paper Demonized General's Primordial Energy skill and now with his wish answered, he couldn't help but use it immediately. He reached out and sucked at a demonized soldier at Tiger Cage Pass. The demonized soldier's body was instantly sucked towards the blood-colored avatar's palm, unable to escape no matter how hard it struggled. The blood-colored avatar waved its other palm and slashed down at the demonized soldier's head with Astral Slash Blade. It's truly a godly skill. The importance Joe Wen placed on the Astral Suction Palm was higher than the Astral Slash Blade. Although Astral Slash Blade was powerful, it was only an offensive measure. Even without it, Joe Wen still had other offensive means. However, this was the only primordial energy skill he had that could force an enemy to change trajectories. After studying it for a while, Joe Wen gained a general understanding of the Astral Suction Palm. It was just like Astral Slash Blade, a primordial energy skill that didn't have fixed primordial energy costs. The further the enemy was, or the greater the weight, the more primordial energy that Astral Suction Palm expended. With the amount of primordial energy Joe Wen had at present, he could easily absorb creatures like demonized soldiers from about 2 meters away. In turn, legendary creatures like a demonized general would be more difficult. However, being unable to draw an enemy didn't mean it was useless. The suction force would still affect the demonized general, causing its actions to deviate from its intentions. A clash between experts lasted for an instant, so any deviation was fatal. The more Joe Wen studied Astral Suction Palm, the more satisfied he was with it. In the future, after he advanced to the legendary stage, his primordial energy upper limits would increase, thus raising the might of his Astral Suction Palm. It would be an evergreen primordial energy skill. Among the 3-word engraved demonized generals, only the fist demonized general hasn't been killed. I wonder if the Astral Suction Palm can withstand the fist demonized general skills. Joe Wen couldn't be sure. Now that Joe Wen had the silver-winged flying ant and the mutated lotus flower ant, he was still unable to defeat the fist demonized general. It was not that the fist demonized general was much more powerful than paper and blade demonized generals, but that its main skill was just too ridiculous. When used, it seemed to gain an invincible body that the mutated lotus flower ant and silver-winged flying ant's primordial energy skills were unable to injure or kill. Now all Zhou Wen could do was place his hopes on Astral Suction Palm. Since Astral Slash Blade countered Astral Suction Palm, it was possible that Astral Suction Palm countered the Fist Demonized General's skill. However, encountering a Fist Demonized General solely depended on luck. Zhou Wen constantly grinded the dungeon before heading to the Fire God platform to read the ancient Imperial Sutra. This continued as the days passed. Zhou Wen, I'm ready. Come to Lotus Flower Cave with me again. Wang Lu, who he hadn't seen in days, shouted for Zhou Wen from the neighboring yard. Today was the deadline for her homework mission. Zhou Wen had been paid, so he naturally had no reason to reject her. He had to accompany her to the Lotus Flower Cave. This is my last chance. Today, I will definitely break Huang Ji's record. Wang Lu was filled with confidence. Zhou Wen declined to comment. All he did was film Wang Lu from behind with a camera. After they entered the Lotus Flower Cave, they searched for fairy monkeys in the stone cave. After exploring several spots in the stone caves, they finally discovered a fairy monkey. However, before Wang Lu could make a move, the fairy monkey was killed by someone else. Article 112 of 1597. It was a boy of Zhou Wen's age. He held a purple narrow saber in his hand and his body flashed like a ghost. With a few clashes with the fairy monkey, he slew it. The entire process took less than 20 seconds and the speed at which it happened was terrifying. Zhou Wen sized up the boy in astonishment. He found it amazing that the boy's speed was faster than a fairy monkey's. It was extremely rare among students. His saber skills were even faster than his physical movement techniques. Fairy monkey's speed and movement techniques were top in class amongst legendary creatures, but for it to fail to dodge a single saber strike implied how terrifyingly fast this saber was. The boy wiped the blood from the saber and looked at Zhou Wen and Wang Lu. Soon, his gaze landed on Zhou Wen. Are you Zhou Wen, the one who killed the word engraved demonized general? The boy stared at Zhou Wen and asked. I'm Zhou Wen. Who are you? Zhou Wen asked. What a pity, the boy said without rhyme or reason before leaving with the saber. Zhou Wen felt a little baffled, but he couldn't be bothered to think too much. With the camera, he prepared to continue forward. Wang Lu, however, looked in the direction of the boy's departure and said, I didn't expect Feng Qian to actually come to Sunset College. Why didn't I see him among the special admission students? Erec. Do you still want to break the record? Zhou Wen asked. The boy from before had clearly broken Huang Ji's previous record. Furthermore, the time he took significantly broke the record at below 20 seconds. Wang Lu might be strong, but to slay a fairy monkey within 20 seconds was clearly impossible. What record? With that fellow around, no one can be faster than him. Wang Lu paused and explained, that fellow is called Feng Qian. You might not have heard of his name in a place like Luang, but where I come from, his fame is at the level of Luang's in Jing. They are all considered invincible, cream of the crop. Rumor has it that his legendary life providence is Swift Saber Heavenly King. At the same stage, no one can be faster than his saber. You saw it too. Even the fairy monkey couldn't dodge his strike, it's obvious how fast his saber is. It's completely impossible to compete in speed records, Wang Lu said with a bitter smile. Swift Saber Heavenly King. Is this a life providence that augments his swift saber? Zhou Wen asked out of curiosity. Probably. A life providence is a secret for everyone, so people wouldn't usually tell others. I only know that his life providence is known as the Swift Saber Heavenly King that significantly augments anything to do with sabers. After a pause, Wang Lu continued, do you know there's an organization that especially rates life providence? The Feng family has a senior that works at that organization. When evaluation of Feng Kaiyan's Swift Saber Heavenly King life providence was made, the rumored result was an S-grade talent. Isn't it said that the ratings of that organization aren't accurate? Zhou Wen had also heard of the organization. However, it was only a grassroots organization and wasn't created by the league's officials. Therefore, its ratings were greatly limited. Indeed, it can't be confirmed as the life providence they evaluate is firstly based on how much it boosts one's combat ability. As a result, the combat-based life providence ratings are usually higher, but in fact, many life providence might not boost one's combat strength too significantly while still remaining very useful. However, to be rated as an S-grade means the Swift Saber Heavenly King life providence is undeniably powerful. Wang Lu didn't deliberately belittle that organization. I wonder what my life providence will be in the future? Typically, a life providence is related to a person's physique and the primordial energy art one cultivates. My physique isn't bad and the primordial energy art I cultivate in isn't weak. I don't think it will be difficult to obtain a powerful life providence. I just have no idea what kind it will be. It's best if it's a combat-style life providence. Zhou Wen felt some anticipation for his life providence. However, advancement with the Lost Immortal Sutra was much more difficult than the average primordial energy art. Even the primordial energy arts on the mysterious stone monuments weren't as difficult to cultivate as the Lost Immortal Sutra. With Feng Qian around, there's no hope of breaking the record. I can only blame myself for my bad luck. Wang Lu was slightly depressed. Although she didn't really care about this record, to be doused with cold water after preparing for so long and being at the brink of success would leave anyone depressed. It's not difficult to break his record, Zhou Wen said after some thought. You have a solution. Wang Le's eyes lit up as she looked at Zhou Wen. She surprisingly didn't have any doubts over his words. There is a solution, but it's not part of my job, Zhou Wen said. Speak. What conditions do you have? Wang Lu saw through Zhou Wen's thoughts and curled her lips. Money, how much can you pay me if I help you break the record? Zhou Wen wasn't materialistic and didn't spend much money. However, to invest in Huang Jie's game required a huge sum of money. Zhou Wen didn't have the time or means to earn money. All he could do was start with trivial matters and save up whatever he earned. A rich person like Wang Lu, who could pay $150,000 for a videographer, likely valued help to break a record at $150,000 or more. Wang Lu sized up Zhou Wen and asked, "Are you that short of money?" "Yes, very." Zhou Wen nodded. "What do you plan on doing with the money? How much do you need?" Wang Lu asked. Again. "I have no idea how much money I need. A senior from our school is making a mobile game. I wish to invest in him, but I don't know how much I need to invest. However, I believe plenty is needed." Zhou Wen didn't hide the fact that it was an investment in a game. He was planning to invest in Huang Jie's game to make others know of it. The more people who knew it, the better. You're really a gaming fanatic. In this era, there aren't many people who are addicted to games like you anymore. Wang Lu thought for a while before saying, but the scale of making a game has quite a range, so the amount of money spent will be highly variable. If you only wish to make a simple game, $100 to $200,000 would be enough. I can give you that immediately, but if the game you wish to make is grander in scale, the money I give you will be a drop in the bucket. You might as well write up a proposal. If I think it's feasible, I can invest in both of you. We'll talk about investment in the future. It's best you give me the money for helping you break the record, Zhou Wen said as he extended his hand. Wang Lu fiercely swatted away Zhou Wen's hand. You can have the money, but first you have to break the record for me. How do I know if you can really help me break the record or not? Zhou Wen didn't say another word. He began searching for a fairy monkey in Lotus Flower Cave with Wang Lu. Breaking a record needed them to first find a fairy monkey. Zhou Wen was rather confident about breaking Feng Kaiwian's record. He had been grinding fairy monkeys recently and had quite some experience killing them. It could be said that Zhou Wen was the person who understood fairy monkeys the most in Sunset College. Article 113 of 1597. It will result in a death blow, otherwise, it will be a waste of time. Wang Lu and Zhou Wen came to an empty stone cave before the former carefully watched Zhou Wen's video. How did you figure out such positioning and the fairy monkey's weakness? Wang Lu found it inconceivable the more she looked at it. Even the college's strategies were not as simple and effective as Zhou Wen's. I carefully watched the videos I recorded for you the other day. I studied them for a long time before I could achieve such results. Selling it to you for 150,000 isn't expensive, right? Zhou Wen asked. Not at all. Wang Lu nodded with affirmation. Such experience could not be measured with money. If they were in a real battlefield, it could save one's life. Wang Lu practiced Zhou Wen's positioning for more than half an hour before mastering the crux. Her talent in martial arts wasn't to be underestimated, allowing her to live up to being a special admission student. Then, Wang Lu found the fairy monkey again and killed it according to Zhou Wen's method. The process was rather relaxing. Although the positioning was a little rough, she obtained good results in 17 seconds. It was probably a little faster than Feng Qian. Although the record had been broken, Wang Lu wasn't happy. Others might not know, but she knew very well that Zhou Wen had a more ridiculous result. It was just that his results would not appear in the school's record. Article 114 of 1597. Inside an office, Qiao Sichuan stood respectfully in front of his desk with his head lowered, wearing a humble look. Have you found the thing I asked you to find? A man sat behind his desk. As the only light in the office was the table lamp, the man's face couldn't be seen clearly. Only a blurry silhouette could be seen. Sir, apart from the Yin family, I've searched everywhere I can. I didn't find the thing you were talking about. Qiao Sichuan lowered his head and replied cautiously. Why didn't you go to the Yin family? The man asked indifferently. We had sent people to infiltrate them, but Ouyang Lan keeps the Yin family tightly under wraps. The people we sent didn't have the chance of getting close to where Ouyang Lan and the rest live. They were only able to do miscellaneous chores in the yard. After a pause, Qiao Sichuan continued, in the name of pursuing Jing Daoxian, I had tried using Liz to test the Yin family's attitude. And Tianzuo was very unyielding, and he didn't care about the senator by maiming Liz's energy. See, it's not simple to enter the Yin family to search for it. If everything is that easily solved, what do I need you for? The man coldly asked. Yes, sir. You're right. I will think of another solution. Qiao Sichuan bowed slightly before continuing, Sir, I don't think Professor Ouyang left the thing at the Yin family home. Why do you say that? The man sitting behind the light lit up a cigarette with an old lighter. According to my investigations, Professor Ouyang may be close friends with the Yin family, but he did not agree to Ouyang Lan's marriage into the Yin family. Because of this matter, they had a falling out. Since then, he hasn't entered the Yin family home and wasn't even present when in Tianzuo and in Jing were born. Seeing no response from the man, Qiao Sichuan continued, it's also because after that person's death in the Yin family that Professor Ouyang and Ouyang Lan's relationship improved. However, he's only visited the Yin family a few times and never stays there for more than an hour, much less stay overnight. With Professor Ouyang's relationship with the Yin family, I don't think he will leave something so important there. Then, where would Ouyang hide the thing? The man flicked away some cigarette ash before asking. Sir, do you think Professor Ouyang could have taken it with him? Qiao Sichuan probed. Impossible. That thing can't enter dimensional zones, or it will only spell trouble. Ouyang often needs to enter dimensional zones, so he won't be so stupid. He must have hidden it somewhere. The man paused before saying, regardless, you must find the thing at all costs. Do not dismiss the Yin family's residence. Who knows if their poor relationship was just an act Ouyang deliberately created. Yes, sir. Qiao Sichuan bowed. We don't have much time left. We need to retrieve it as soon as possible. Those ignorant fools outside think that time can be squandered, but they have no idea that the disaster is already hanging above their necks like a guillotine blade. It can fall at any time. Once the dimensional zone's restrictions are gone, humanity will usher in the apocalypse. Therefore, we need to have that item in our hands to prevent that from happening, the man said. Sir, is that thing really that important? Qiao Sichuan asked the question on his mind. Back when humanity entered the Holy Land, there weren't just 6 heroes. In fact, there were a lot more, but most of them ended up dying inside, their names unknown to people. Besides the 6 heroes, some also left the Holy Land alive and brought certain things out. Jing Daoxian was one of them. Likewise for Ouyang. The thing he has was something I saw him take out the Holy Land with my own eyes. It is of grave importance. We need to gain control of it, the man said. Sir, I think there's a coincidence over a matter, but I'm not sure if it's problem, Qiao Sichuan said after some thought. Speak. Back when Jing Daoxian was seriously injured and under our pursuit, he actually stayed in Guide City for nearly 10 minutes, Qiao Sichuan said. You've already written this in the report. It's related to that youth named Zhou Wen, right? That's right. Later on, I investigated Zhou Wen in detail. Other than being Zhou Lingfeng's son, he has a rather good relationship with Professor Ouyang. When Professor Ouyang was principal at Guide City, he often invited Zhou Wen to eat at his placia treatment that other students and even teachers didn't receive. Now, Ouyang Lan has married Zhou Lingfeng. I just find it too much of a coincidence. I'm thinking of the possibility that Professor Ouyang gave the item to Zhou Wen or Zhou Lingfeng. Impossible. The power of that thing isn't something a mortal stage can withstand. It's impossible to even hold it. You can continue investigating Zhou Wen, but you have to place your focus on the Yin family. The only ones with the capability to commandeer that item in the Yin family are in Tianzuo and Ouyang Lan. Yes, I understand. Feng Qian wasn't in a good mood. He originally thought that he would definitely be first in class for the homework mission, but he never expected Wang Lu to be faster than him by nearly a second. As expected of Wang Lu. She already has such power even before advancing to the legendary stage. After Feng Qian saw Wang Le's video for the homework mission, he realized that he had lost fair and square. Wang Le's comprehension and control over her positioning had reached an extremely high level. This was something that he lacked. After Wang Lu advances to the legendary stage, I will definitely fight her. Before that, I still need to train myself and make myself stronger. Feng Qian quickly walked to the school gym. Feng Qian believed that he had to be focused on everything he did. Quality was demanded for everything, so he only practiced his saber techniques. He hoped to make his saber techniques faster and stronger, allowing him to reach the peak of the world. Hence, after arriving at the gym, Feng Qian immediately walked towards the training court where the ball launcher was. It was the most suitable machine for him to practice his sabers. Speed. However, when Feng Qian got to the ball launcher court, he frowned when he realized that someone was occupying the grounds in practice. On careful look, he realized that the person was someone he knew, the freshman who had killed the word-engraved demonized general, Zhou Wen. There was only one ball launcher, so Feng Qian didn't wish to waste any time waiting. Therefore, after some thought, he walked straight into the court and picked up a rubber training saber from the rack before walking towards Zhou Wen. Article 115 of 1597. Chapter 115. Unable to touch the balls. Zhou Wen felt that having his strength constantly increased despite staying in his dorm gaming all day seemed a little too eyebrow-raising, so he planned on some outdoor activities. At least, he had to let others know that he was cultivating arduously. After circling the gym once, he had planned on choosing a simple strength training machine to train his legs, allowing him to free his hands and continue gaming. But to his surprise, the gym was filled with people. After searching for a while, he discovered an empty training court. In the past, Zhou Wen had never used a ball launcher. After seeing the demonstration on the screen, he knew what kind of machine it was. The ball launcher was similar to the pitching machines used in baseball practice. Balls were shot out of the machine and the trainee aimed to hit them. It was just that the launcher would be shot in random directions in a wide area. Furthermore, it could also shoot multiple balls simultaneously. This was slightly different from a baseball pitching machine. There were many practice weapons on the rack: sabers, swords, poles, spears, whips, etc. They were all made of rubber. Zhou Wen casually picked up a short pole and turned on the ball launcher. He was too lazy to study how he could adjust the launcher's difficulty, so he simply switched it on. A ball shot out from the launcher's barrel like a cannonball. Zhou Wen took note of the distance and swung his short stick, easily striking the ball and sending it far away. Soon, Zhou Wen realized that the launcher was rather simple. He could use one hand to strike the balls while using the other for gaming. Some training like this doesn't seem too bad. As Zhou Wen gamed, he didn't need to look at the balls with his eyes to strike them. The listening ability that Truth Listener imbued him allowed him to hit the balls accurately. Furthermore, Zhou Wen discovered that practicing Truth Listener's hearing ability was very helpful to his hearing. There were all kinds of dimensional zones, many that had a great effect on one's vision, causing people to sometimes fight blind. All Zhou Wen originally wanted to do was to get some exercise, but after practicing for a while he found such training very beneficial. At that moment, Feng Qian arrived at the training ground. He walked onto the court with a practice saber in hand, but when he saw Zhou Wen gaming while striking the balls, he couldn't help but frown. Looking at the ball's trajectory and speed, he knew that this was the lowest level of difficulty. It wasn't even a challenge for ordinary high schoolers who had cultivated, much less students of Sunset College. From Feng Qian's point of view, Zhou Wen's training was an insult to the word training. Therefore, Feng Qian decided to kick Zhou Wen out. Rather than let Zhou Wen waste the school's resources, it was better for him to train more. Of course, it was beneath Feng Qian to chase someone away, nor did he want to nag at Zhou Wen like a woman. Feng Qian had his own ways of doing things in a masculine manner. He approached Zhou Wen with a practice saber in hand, and Feng Qian stood there silently without moving as he stared at the ball launcher's muzzle. Feng Qian's idea was very simple. It was like playing basketball. As long as he snatched away all rebounds, preventing Zhou Wen from touching the balls, Zhou Wen would naturally find it pointless and leave. Feng Qian was confident he could snatch all of Zhou Wen's balls, preventing him from even touching a single ball. Pong. With a compressive blast emitted from the launch, a ball was shot out as it flew towards Zhou Wen at high speeds. Right now, Feng Qian's heart stirred and was about to swing the wooden saber in his hand. He was confident that as long as he brandished his saber, there would be nothing left for Zhou Wen. The speed at which he drew his saber was not something any ordinary student could match. Even if Zhou Wen stood in front of him, Feng Qian was confident he could gain the upper hand. However, when Feng Qian raised the practice saber in his hand and was about to brandish it, his hand paused in midair. He had ultimately failed to complete the slash as he watched Zhou Wen send the ball flying with his practice pole. Is it a coincidence? Feng Qian frowned as he looked at Zhou Wen. He had his back to him, one hand still holding a pole, the other hand gaming on his phone. However, just as Feng Qian was about to attack, he felt that Zhou Wen was standing in the most appropriate position, blocking all the trajectories of his saber slashes. It prevented him from slashing at the ball. It was like a rebound in basketball. Zhou Wen stood in the spot where the basketball landed. Although the others could jump higher than him, it was difficult to snatch the ball if they weren't in the right place. The position Zhou Wen stood in had given Feng Qian such a feeling, preventing him from having any chance of striking. It's probably just a coincidence, Feng Qian thought to himself as he stared at the ball launcher's muzzle. There were a total of 36 launching muzzles. They were split into 6 rows, covering a length and height of 20 meters. Each muzzle had a small range of movement and direction, allowing for different trajectories in the balls it shot out. As it was set to the lowest difficulty level, it only shot out one ball at a time. However, where the ball shot out from and its direction was unpredictable. Feng Qian focused and planned on finding the ball's landing spot before Zhou Wen could. He wanted him to have a taste of what it felt like to not be able to hit the ball. Pong. Another ball shot out. Feng Qian trained his gaze at the ball's direction and position. Just as he raised his foot to rush over, he saw Zhou Wen already walk over. He was already one step too slow if he took the step now. Even if he rushed over, he would lose the optimal spot, failing to snatch the ball from Zhou Wen like before. If you want to play, fine. I'll be serious this time. Feng Qian imagined Zhou Wen was competing with him. Furthermore, Zhou Wen's attitude of gaming while striking the ball made it obvious to him that he thought nothing of him. This made Feng Qian vexed. However, Zhou Wen wasn't thinking too much about it. He did hear someone beside him, but he didn't know that the person was Feng Qian, nor did he know that Feng Qian wanted to chase him away. He originally imagined that the training court allowed multiple people in, so he thought nothing of it. He just struck the balls, relying on his hearing and senses. The inclusion of Feng Qian was also a form of practice for him. Zhou Wen was still grinding ant nest, a dungeon he usually grinded when in public with other people around. Another ball shot out. Feng Qian was already fully focused, but just as he took his step, he realized that Zhou Wen was one step ahead of him, happening to walk to the optimal location before him again. Pong. The ball was sent flying by Zhou Wen again. Feng Qian had failed to touch 3 consecutive balls. He didn't even strike out at all. Article 116 of 1597. Chapter 116, How Did You Do It? Light Novel World. At first, Feng Qian had deliberately suppressed his speed, trying his best to maintain it at the mortal stage to compete with Zhou Wen. However, with the passage of time, Feng Qian subconsciously increased his speed after repeatedly failing to beat Zhou Wen to the punch. He began competing with Zhou Wen with speed at the legendary stage. This only served to alarm Feng Qian. Even more speed at the legendary stage was still inadequate. Although his speed was really much faster than Zhou Wen's, with Zhou Wen standing in the middle of the court, which was about 20 meters wide, he only needed to cover 10 meters. Due to the short distance, he wasn't able to manifest his speed advantage. That was not the main reason either. Although the advantage of a short distance wasn't too obvious, an advantage was still an advantage. Under normal circumstances, he would definitely grab an advantageous spot ahead of time. Even if he couldn't take that spot with his saber speed, he could still strike the ball before Zhou Wen. However, it was like Zhou Wen was prescient. Before the launcher shot out the ball, he had already begun moving. It was too late for Feng Qian to move by the time he saw the ball. Having faster speed was useless, and this left Feng Qian extremely aggrieved. What was even more unacceptable to Feng Qian was that Zhou Wen had been gaming with his other hand the entire time while snatching the ball away from him. At first, Feng Qian thought that Zhou Wen was deliberately insulting him and wasn't really focused on his gaming. However, Feng Qian later discovered that Zhou Wen was truly gaming. His eyes were peeled to the screen, having never left it once. It was as though snatching the ball was something that he did in passing. This fellow. He's formidable. Sweat began oozing out of Feng Qian's forehead as he stared at Zhou Wen's back. The contempt he had for him previously vanished completely. Zhou Wen's figure seemed to grow in size, turning tall and mighty. It was like an uninvadable city wall. Zhou Wen wasn't paying attention to him at all, lost to his new discovery. The Truth Listener earring gave him tremendous hearing, enough to make him hear the ball launcher in operation clearly. Therefore, he knew which muzzle the ball would shoot out ahead of time, allowing him to know the ball's trajectory and landing spot before Feng Qian. However, this wasn't the biggest surprise for Zhou Wen. What truly surprised him was his train of thought. Zhou Wen was an extremely focused person. In the past, no matter what he did, he could be fully focused without being disturbed by anything. Therefore, others might find him dull due to his lack of reaction no matter what they said to him. In fact, it wasn't because Zhou Wen was dull and silly, but that he was too focused to the point of not being able to hear what others were saying to him. Now, Zhou Wen realized that he could still be focused on what he was doing, but at the same time, he seemed to be able to handle other matters as well. This feeling was rather indescribable. If an analogy had to be made, Zhou Wen's thought process could be analogous to a computer processor. In the past, Zhou Wen's brain was a single-core processor, but now it was a dual-core, allowing it to handle multiple programs at the same time. Of course, this was only an analogy and was limited in its accuracy. However, it was a fact that Zhou Wen could hit all the balls while gaming. There didn't seem to be any interference between the two activities. At the same time, Zhou Wen keenly discovered that while he was gaming and striking the balls, the Lost Immortal Sutra's circulation became especially fast. It was more than twice as fast as usual. It appears this is the result of the Lost Immortal Sutra. Zhou Wen increasingly found the Lost Immortal Sutra extraordinary. However, he couldn't figure out why Jing Daoxian had given him such a powerful primordial energy art for no reason. It didn't seem to make sense if it was simply because he caught his fancy. Zhou Wen didn't know the origins of the Lost Immortal Sutra, so he naturally didn't know how terrifying it was. If not for the extraordinary focus he was born with, he would have long been killed by it. Even if he didn't die, he would go mad. Even now, Zhou Wen could hear the murmuring voices resounding in his ears when sleeping at night. It would be difficult for a normal person to endure such harassment. Even if he didn't go mad, he would become extremely irascible, yet Zhou Wen didn't suffer from such effects. As Zhou Wen indulged in the thrill of his new discovery and training, Feng Qian's expression became increasingly ugly. He had already done his best but couldn't snatch the ball from Zhou Wen. Although summoning a companion beast would give him a chance of defeating Zhou Wen, Feng Qian's pride prevented him from doing so. He continued relying only on his physical prowess to compete with Zhou Wen. When Zhou Wen felt that he had enough practice today, he stopped and rested. Just as he was about to return, he turned his head to look at Feng Qian. He couldn't help but be taken aback by what he saw. He recognized Feng Qian, but he looked drastically different from before. He was covered in sweat as he panted heavily. His eyes were glaring at him with eyes as red as a rabbit's eyes. This looked like he could devour him at any moment, gave Zhou Wen a fright. Feng Qian wasn't truly exhausted but was suffering from immense mental stress. With his physique at the legendary stage, he had lost to a mortal stage fellow. Furthermore, he had been badly defeated. He had failed to snatch a single ball despite Zhou Wen gaming with one hand. The stress was simply unimaginable. If it weren't for Feng Qian's determination, anyone else with a slightly weaker will would probably have already lost their confidence. The more Feng Qian wanted to win, the greater the stress he was under. The mental fatigue he suffered exceeded his physical fatigue. When Zhou Wen imagined that Feng Qian would lunge at him and bite him, Feng Qian glared at him and suddenly asked, "How did you do it?" "What do you mean how?" Zhou Wen was slightly taken aback. "How are you able to predict the landing spot of the ball without looking for it?" Feng Qian asked the question burning in his heart. He was stronger than Zhou Wen in everything, but he had lost to him on this point. Because of this, Zhou Wen pointed at his ear before picking up the coat on the chair and left. Zhou Wen was referring to the truth listener earring he was wearing, but Feng Qian clearly misunderstood Zhou Wen's words. He believed that Zhou Wen was referring to his ear, and instantly he fell into thought as he muttered to himself, so that's how it is. So he wasn't really gaming, but using the game to divert his sight and only use his ears to listen out for the ball. So there's actually such a training method. From the looks of it, the rumors of him being a gaming fanatic aren't as simple as they seem. He's more hardworking than anyone. Even gaming is a form of cultivation. Clearly, Feng Qian misunderstood Zhou Wen. In fact, gaming was his main goal, and practicing his listening skills was just something he did in passing. Seeing Zhou Wen walk out of the court, Feng Qian suddenly snapped to attention as though he had awoken from a dream. He chased after him and called, "Zhou Wen, wait a moment." Article 117 of 1597. Chapter 117. Please be my coach. What's the matter? Seeing Feng Qian chase after him, Zhou Wen could only stop and turn his head to look at him. Feng Qian stared at him and enunciated each and every word as he said, "I want to hire you as my personal coach. Help tailor a training plan for me." "You want me to be your personal coach?" Zhou Wen pointed at his nose and asked in surprise. He did not believe that he had the talent to make training plans. His own plan was to game after gaming, ad infinitum. "Please don't reject me. If you have any conditions, feel free to raise them. Money isn't a problem." Feng Qian was quite sincere. Zhou Wen had already opened his mouth, prepared to reject the offer, but upon hearing the words "money isn't a problem," he swallowed the words he was about to say. "Are you sure you want me to be your personal coach and tailor training plans for you? I'm only a mortal grade student." Zhou Wen looked at Feng Qian and confirmed it once again. "Your level is not a problem. I just want to know your training methods. If you find it troublesome, you don't have to deliberately plan one for me. I just need to train with you." "I'll do whatever you do," Feng Qian said with all seriousness. Feng Qian clearly misunderstood Zhou Wen, believing that he, who could think of using his sense of hearing to train his strikes, definitely had plans for targeted training. Therefore, he wanted to hire Zhou Wen as his personal coach. He wanted to know how Zhou Wen had trained to his present standards. Perhaps it could aid him in his cultivation, allowing him to break through his recent bottleneck. "I'm very expensive." Zhou Wen didn't think too much about it. Since there was a chance for him to earn money, there was no reason not to. "I'll pay you what it costs to hire the most expensive personal coaches on the market. The payment can be made monthly or per class. If you have any other requests, you can tell me now," said Feng Qian. "It's best we settle it according to class, so a payment for each class." Zhou Wen thought for a moment and realized that he didn't have much to teach. He decided to teach a lesson first, and if he really couldn't handle it, he wouldn't keep scamming Feng Qian. One class would be all. "All right." Feng Qian agreed without hesitation. He paid Zhou Wen for one class and eagerly asked, "Coach, what kind of training do we have for the first class?" Zhou Wen thought for a moment before asking, "You use the saber, right?" "That's right. I train to push my swift saber to the pinnacle, and I pursue extreme speed." Feng Qian looked at Zhou Wen with anticipation. He hoped that Zhou Wen could give him some special training method to aid his breakthrough. Zhou Wen pondered for a while when he heard that. He suddenly realized that he didn't know any saber techniques, nor had he practiced any of them. The only thing he knew that had anything to do with sabers was Astral Slash Blade. However, Astral Slash Blade was a primordial energy skill that resembled a blade beam. It did not have any technique to speak of, as it was cleaved out directly without any need for cultivation. Despite thinking all day, Zhou Wen couldn't think of a training plan tailored to Feng Qian's cultivation. Suddenly, an idea flashed in Zhou Wen's mind as he thought of the word engraved demonized general in Tiger Cage Pass. The word engraved demonized general had 3 different types. The blade demonized general's Astral Slash Blade was fast and ruthless, but it could only suppress the paper demonized general and was useless against the fist demonized general. Although a swift saber was formidable, there were also ways to counter one. In any case, I don't know any saber techniques yet. I'll make Feng Qian practice his saber in a diametrically opposite manner. When the time comes, he'll find something amiss and won't come looking for me again. Realizing how quick Feng Qian was to pay him, he found him quite a nice guy and didn't wish to scam him further. "Feng Qian, have you ever heard of the principle of extreme yang gives birth to yin?" Zhou Wen asked Feng Qian. "Are you referring to how things develop in an opposite direction when they go to the extreme?" Feng Qian asked after some thought. "It's almost the same. The ancients say that true wisdom sounds foolish and great skill looks clumsy. It's possible to have the opposite effect once you reach an extreme. You practice in the swift saber, then perhaps one day, if you feel slow drawing your saber, it might mean that your saber techniques can improve further," Zhou Wen said in a cursory manner, hoping that he could satisfy Feng Qian for now so that he wouldn't seek him out again. Feng Qian took Zhou Wen's words seriously as he asked, "Then, how do I train to reach the realm of the slow saber?" "Some things require you to figure it out yourself. No matter how well others explain it, that's still someone else's insight. Only something you figure out is yours. I have already given you direction. As for how you should do it, it will require you to think about it. Although Zhou Wen was bullshitting Feng Qian, what he said was truly what he believed in and understood. It wasn't complete nonsense. After managing to get rid of Feng Qian with great difficulty, Zhou Wen jogged back to his dorm and lay comfortably in bed as he took out his mysterious phone. Perhaps it was his luck. This time, while he was grinding the Lotus Flower Cave, although he failed to obtain a rank 9 Dragon Gate Fairy skill, he managed to obtain a Fairy Monkey Companion Egg. Fairy Beast, Legendary. Life Providence, Pet of Air. Strength, 15. Speed, 18. Constitution, 15. Primordial Energy, 14. Talent Skill, Dragon Gate Fairy Skill. Companion Form, Wings. The Fairy Monkey's stats were clearly incomparable to the silver-winged flying ant, so he directly fed the companion egg to Truth Listener. In the past, Truth Listener didn't react much after eating a companion egg. However, after swallowing the companion egg this time, a system notification appeared. Truth Listener has obtained the evolution requirement and is beginning to evolve. Zhou Wen saw Truth Listener's figure appear on the screen. It was a tiny beast in the shape of a golden silk monkey. At this moment, Truth Listener was glowing with resplendent golden light, as though it was a golden Buddha statue. It was so blinding that it filled the entire screen with golden light. After feeding it for so long, it's finally evolving. Zhou Wen was delighted. Truth Listener at the mortal stage was not of much use. However, it would definitely be very useful after advancing to the legendary stage. After a while, the golden light on the screen gradually faded away, revealing its true looks. At the same time, a system notification popped up on the screen: Truth Listener's evolution completed. However, Zhou Wen didn't seem to notice much of a change. Its body was still small, only slightly bigger than his fingers. It was covered in golden fur and its eyes were sparkling with golden light. No, it's still a little different. Zhou Wen realized that Truth Listener was indeed somewhat different. It originally resembled a golden silk monkey with just a pair of ears, but now it had another pair of ears. It now had 4 ears. However, its ears were very small. They were neatly placed on both sides of its head without making it look ugly at all. If one didn't look closely, one would not notice that it had 4 ears. Article 118 of 1597. Chapter 118, Heaven's Senses. Truth Listener, Legendary, Evolvable. Life Providence, Heaven's Senses. Strength, 21. Speed, 21. Constitution, 21. Primordial Energy, 21. Talent Skill, Truth Listener, Indestructible Golden Body, Evil Warding, 9 Extremes. Companion Form, Earring. In the past, Zhou Wen thought that the maximum stats for legendaries was 18. He later found through the mutated Lotus Flower Ant and Silver-Winged Flying Ant that 18 wasn't the limit, but he had never seen 21. Mythical creatures are really different. Even if they haven't evolved to the mythical stage, their stats aren't something ordinary companion beasts can compare with. However, I have no idea what exact use Heaven's Senses has. Zhou Wen read Truth Listener's stats carefully and saw that there was an additional note regarding the life providence, prying into the secrets of the world using ears instead of eyes. When he summoned Truth Listener, it still looked petite. It was glowing with golden light as if it was a piece of golden silk monkey art carved out of gold. From its appearance, it did not seem powerful at all. The legendary mutated skeleton ant that shared its level looked many times stronger than it. Getting Truth Listener to turn into an earring before wearing it, Zhou Wen closed his eyes and focused. He immediately felt that the Truth Listener earring had augmented his sense of hearing in a way that was much better than before. Although he had his eyes closed, everything around him appeared like a three-dimensional figure in his mind. It was as though Zhou Wen could see everything around him. The only difference was that the three-dimensional figure in his mind was black and white instead of the colored world he saw with his eyes. Zhou Wen knew that he wasn't really seeing anything but the ability brought by the Truth Listener earring. He originally believed that he had no way of hearing a still object no matter how good his hearing was. But now, he realized that what he believed was wrong. No object existed independently. Although some objects were still, the movement of other objects would similarly affect them. As long as his hearing was powerful enough, he could replace his eyes with his ears to see still objects. The flow of air and the sound waves produced feedback the moment they touched a still object. The average person couldn't hear such feedback, but the Truth Listener earring allowed Zhou Wen to hear it clearly. Furthermore, it outlined a three-dimensional figure in his mind, as though he was looking at it with his own eyes. There were even more details than could be seen with open eyes. Within 20 meters, even if there were obstructions, Zhou Wen could still see everything behind the walls with his ears. It was as if he had X-ray vision. Other than the lack of colors, everything else was no different from normal vision. With this strange sense of hearing, Zhou Wen could clearly hear everything in the 2 buildings beside him. The soundproofing was completely ineffective against him. While Wang Lu wasn't in the dorm and Jing happened to be in the bedroom near to Zhou Wen. He didn't have a fetish for invading privacies, so just as he was about to retract his hearing, he heard Jing say, "Zhou Wen still hasn't cultivated in the sun strafe art. Was the harm I dealt him last time that great? Did I really go too far?" Zhou Wen was slightly taken aback. If he hadn't identified that the person speaking was clearly Jing, he would have believed that he had heard wrongly. His impression of Jing was always one that was haughty and aloof, as if she viewed everything in a condescending manner. It was hard to imagine that these words came from her mouth. Zhou Wen couldn't help but feel curious. He wanted to hear what Jing would say, so he didn't put away the truth listener earring and continued listening to the commotion next door. The usually cold and arrogant Jing was now sitting on the bed with a teddy bear in hand. It was as if she was speaking to the bear. I didn't really want to hurt him. I just wanted to prove myself. I just want to let Grandpa know that Mom's choice was wrong. Her child is the best, far more excellent than the genius described by Grandpa. I know Zhou Wen is innocent and this matter has nothing to do with him, but apart from defeating him, I didn't have any way of proving to Grandpa that I'm better than him. I really didn't want to set him back. Bear, what do I have to do to make him stand back on his feet? And Jing paused before adding, it's not that I care about him. It's just that if he can't get back on his feet and advance to the legendary stage, my defeat of him will be meaningless. It still wouldn't prove to Grandpa that I'm better than him. So I must first help him establish his confidence and then help him advance to the legendary stage. I'll defeat him when he's at tip-top shape. This will let Grandpa know that his daughter's child is the best. Mom's decision to marry Dad was right. Upon hearing this, Zhou Wen stopped listening and put away the truth listener earring. Now he finally understood why Jing was targeting him. It was not because of Zhou Lingfeng and Ouyang Lan's marriage, nor was it simply because of that special physique. However, Zhou Wen wasn't concerned that Jing was upset with him. He only hoped that Jing would not disturb him in the future. It was best if they minded their own business. Now all Zhou Wen wanted to do was game in peace. The fewer things he had to do, the better. As usual, he first killed all the mini-bosses in the dungeons before heading to Fire God platform to memorize the ancient Imperial Sutra. Just as he was doing it the second time, the doorbell rang. Zhou Wen opened the door and saw that it was Li Xuan, who he hadn't seen in days. Li Xuan wore a smug look as he patted Zhou Wen on the shoulder. Brat, I'll be protecting you in the future. If there's anyone who dares bully you, just give them my name. You aren't sick, are you? Zhou Wen swatted away Li Xuan's hand and sat down on the couch. He poured himself a cup of blood-replenishing tea and slowly drank it. Li Xuan smugly sat down beside Zhou Wen and wrapped his arm around his shoulder. Suppressing his excitement, he deliberately whispered, Old Zhou, I finally succeeded in advancing to the legendary stage. Guess what my life providence is? I'm not guessing. I'm not interested. Zhou Wen continued drinking his tea. However, Li Xuan still said excitedly, I doubt you can guess it anyway. Let me tell you, my legendary life providence is Immortal God of Combat. Isn't that impressive? Just the sound of the name makes it freaking awesome. I'm not bragging, but this life providence pretty much means invincibility, an immortal body, a supreme dominance body. People like Yang Lai will be exhausted to death beating me while I stand there, completely unmoved. When Li Xuan said this, he stood up and jumped onto the couch. He made an arrogant pose, his eyes filled with contempt as though he was looking down on everyone in the world. But as soon as he finished speaking, he was kicked down by the sleeping antelope. The antelope had already treated the couch as its bed. For Li Xuan to have the guts to hop on its bed in his shoes, there was no way it was going to be friendly with him. Bang! Li Xuan fell to the ground, his sternum sinking in with the shape of a hoof while he spewed out blood from his mouth. Isn't that an antelope? Li Xuan sprawled on the ground as he looked at the languid antelope in astonishment, his face wearing a look of disbelief. Article 119 of 1597. Li Xuan had always believed that the antelope was a mutated animal from the bottom half of Mount Laojun. However, the power of its hooves made him realize that it was not only a dimensional creature but an extremely high-level one. His immortal God of Combat life providence had greatly augmented his constitution. Although calling it an immortal and indestructible dominance body was an exaggeration, it wouldn't be easy for mere legendaries to injure him. The antelope had severely injured him with a casual kick of its hoof. This was already beyond the strength of a legendary level. It was highly likely an epic stage existence. I'll take you to the hospital. Zhou Wen was also given a fright. Although the antelope had been staying at his place and refusing to leave, it had never hurt him. Now, with this strike, it had severely injured Li Xuan, who had just ascended to the legendary stage. It also confirmed Zhou Wen's previous speculation that the antelope had terrifying strength. There's no need. This small injury is nothing to me. The immortal God of Combat life providence still means something. Li Xuan shook his head and propped himself up, using the coffee table to stand up. Li Xuan seemed to be enduring a great deal of pain in the beginning. Even breathing seemed to be unbearable and his face was ghastly pale. However, after taking a few deep breaths, his complexion gradually improved. The injury on his chest seemed to be slowly recovering. The immortal God of Combat has a powerful self-recovery ability. As long as I'm alive, my injuries can slowly recover. Li Xuan did not forget to boast about his life providence. Your Virgin God of Combat life providence sure is nice. Zhou Wen was slightly surprised. This life providence was really impressive. It could be considered a life-saving skill. What Virgin God of Combat? It's Immortal God of Combat. Cough agitated, Li Xuan pulled at his internal injuries, causing him to cough out a lot of blood. It looks like your self-recovery powers won't restore you that quickly. Let me take you to the hospital now. Zhou Wen helped Li Xuan out. Li Xuan originally wanted to say no, but when he saw the antelope on the couch, he shivered and left Zhou Wen's dormitory with his neck shrank back. What's with that antelope? Isn't it a mutated animal from Mount Laozhen? Li Xuan asked in a suppressed voice after Zhou Wen helped him out of the building. I'm not too sure either. It's been following me all this time, but it hasn't injured anyone before. It's the first time today, Zhou Wen said honestly. Forget it. I'll just blame it on my luck. There's no need to go to the hospital. Let's find a place to rest. I still have something to tell you. Li Xuan felt depressed. Zhou Wen sized Li Xuan up and asked, is your injury really alright? It's just a flesh wound and I'm not internally injured. Even if we don't go to the hospital, it will only take a few days before I recover. It'll be troublesome if we go to the hospital, but you be careful in the future. Don't end up getting kicked to death by that animal, Li Xuan said. The two of them sat down on a long bench on the lawn. Li Xuan's complexion was much better now, having appeared to have returned to normal. From the looks of it, he wasn't just bragging. The immortal god of combat was indeed impressive. It's not bad to have a life-saving life providence like Li Xuan's, Zhou Wen thought. The school's first comprehensive test is almost here. How's your preparation going? Li Xuan asked after taking a few deep breaths while on the long bench. What preparation? Zhou Wen knew about the monthly comprehensive test, but he had no idea why he needed to prepare for it. Li Xuan rolled his eyes at Zhou Wen speechlessly. Let me guess. You didn't read the syllabus for the comprehensive test. No, has it been announced? Zhou Wen shook his head slightly. Li Xuan complained, you really don't know anything about the outside world. All you focus on is gaming. Every year, the first comprehensive test is the same. There are a total of 4 subjects: fishing a coin from a pot of oil, crossing a paper bridge, lifting stone tripod cauldrons, and sucking in the mountain and rivers. You need to pass 2 of these tests to pass. If you were to fail 3 of them, you would be dismissed from school. Why do these names sound like acrobatic performances of the past? Zhou Wen laughed. The names are indeed tacky, but they really aren't easy. These tests are real tests of ability and not some sleight of hand used by acrobats on the street. Fishing out a coin from a pot of boiling oil uses real oil. To fish one out with one's physical body is definitely impossible. Your hand will be crippled the moment you put it in. You need to have a primordial energy skill covering your hand or have a protective primordial energy skill to fish the coin out. Crossing the paper bridge is the easiest test to fail. It's a paper bridge spanning 100 meters. The bridge's surface is made of thin calligraphic paper and tearing it when stepping over it will be considered a failure. Without a primordial energy skill that imbues you with alacrity, there's no way to cross it. The lifting of the stone tripod cauldron is easy. As long as you have enough strength, using some primordial energy skill that enhances strength will allow you to pass. It's not difficult to devour the mountain and rivers either. As long as you have 9 points of primordial energy, you'll basically pass. These are the basic requirements Sunset College sets. You should be fine for the latter too, but you need to prepare the first 2. If you don't have the type of primordial energy skills required, I can lend you a few primordial energy skill crystals, Li Xuan said. There's no need. I have my ways of passing. Zhou Wen had Lotus Flower Buddha's primordial energy skill, so it shouldn't be a problem to fish out a coin. As for crossing the paper bridge, he also had Dragon Gate Fairy skill. It wouldn't be difficult for him to cross the bridge. However, Zhou Wen didn't plan on completing all the tests since he could pass as long as he completed 2 tests. There was no need for him to participate in all 4 of them. However, Li Xuan said, don't take this matter lightly. If you can squeeze into the top 10 in the comprehensive test, you can get a chance to enter Providence Palace. Besides Sunset College. That's an awesome place unique to Sunset College that you can't find elsewhere. Providence Palace. Zhou Wen was surprised. Zhou Wen had heard of this name before. Providence Palace was actually the royal palace in the era of the Sui and Tang dynasty. Back then, Luang City was the capital and center of politics of the country, and Providence Palace was the political center of Luang. Later on, Providence Palace was later buried in history and was destroyed during a war. However, after the dimensional storms, its ruins formed a dimensional zone. Zhou Wen had heard a lot of rumors about the Providence Palace's dimensional zone. It was a relatively special dimensional zone without much danger inside, yet it was possible to obtain great opportunities inside. In the past, when he was in high school, there were rumors of a certain student obtaining a particular treasure in Providence Palace and ended directly shooting to stardom, advancing to the legendary or even the epic stage. Of course, they were only urban myths. The Providence Palace's dimensional zone had always been under Sunset College's control and had never been open to the public. Only a handful of Sunset College students had the qualification to enter. As for what benefits lay within, Zhou Wen really did not know what it was. Article 120 of 1597. I've already found out that there aren't many areas in Providence Palace that have been cleared. We can only walk to the main entrance and can't even enter the city gates. In fact, people do not even consider entering Providence Palace, Li Xuan said. If we can't even get in, why are we heading there? Zhou Wen asked, puzzled. Don't be anxious. Listen to me slowly. Li Xuan acted all mysterious and continued, usually, the doors of Providence Palace are sealed shut. Even the most famous epic experts would not be able to enter, much less us. That's why no one knows what's inside to date. However, one day every year, the city gates to Providence Palace will open. Many strange and magical items will appear from everywhere as though they are dragged by invisible ghosts, lining up to fly inside. I heard that there are all sorts of treasures in there. There are rare antiques, weapons and armors, gemstones and jade, and all kinds of precious treasures. However, they are practically no use to us. True treasures are the companion eggs and dimensional crystals. Rumor has it that a senior once obtained a companion egg which was an epic stage angel. You definitely know of angel companion beasts. They are dimensional creatures that only appear in the West District's dimensional zone. Logically speaking, we shouldn't have any angel companion eggs here, Li Xuan said in a tone of mystery. Is that true? Zhou Wen found Li Xuan's words getting more and more outrageous as he found it unbelievable. Why would I lie to you? Someone from our Li family has already entered, but they didn't pick anything good, Li Xuan said. According to what you've said, since there are so many good things in Providence Palace, why don't they invite more people to head in to take them out? Why do they only allow the top 10 in the comprehensive test in? Zhou Wen still found it unbelievable as Li Xuan's account didn't make sense at all. Do you think anyone can choose what they want? When they first discovered the Providence Palace dimensional zone, they discovered 10 tokens. On that day, only a person with a token had the right to choose one of the items to bring back. Those without the token couldn't even touch anything inside. Those with a token could only choose one object, nothing more, Li Xuan said in apparent seriousness. Although Li Xuan's words were bizarre, Zhou Wen knew that there was no need for him to lie. Instead, he was a little curious about Providence Palace. Li Xuan smiled and said, it's useless to think too much now. If I want to choose something from Providence Palace, I'll have to enter the top 10 at the comprehensive test or it's useless. There are all kinds of experts in Sunset College, so even though I've advanced to the legendary stage, I don't have the confidence of squeezing into the top 10. Old Zhou, you haven't even advanced to the legendary stage. It will only be harder for you to enter the top 10. Ignoring everything else, there's Wang Ji, Hui Heifeng, Wang Lu, Feng Qian, and that sister of yours. Those 5 people will definitely enter the top 10, occupying 5 spots. The remaining 5 spots have many powerful fellows vying for it. I'm sure I can enter the top 10 given a year or two, but now, it's a little hard to say. Zhou Wen didn't know many students at Sunset College, but he knew all of the people Li Xuan mentioned. There's nothing wrong with the rest, but Wang Lu hasn't advanced to the legendary stage yet, right? How do you know that she would definitely be able to take up a spot? Zhou Wen looked at Li Xuan suspiciously. Do you really not know it, or are you faking it? The Wang family's Wang Lu cultivates in the youth rejuvenation divine art. If she can't take the spot, who else can? Li Xuan said. Zhou Wen was confused by what he heard. Seeing that he did not know anything, Li Xuan explained in detail to Zhou Wen. The youth rejuvenation divine art was the Wang family's primordial energy art, which few outsiders knew much about. After cultivating this primordial energy art, the first breakthrough would result in someone regaining their youth. The youth here didn't mean age, but the drop of one's stage to the mortal stage. At the same time, one's physique and talent would improve tremendously. Not only was advancing quick, but one's attainment was higher when redoing the cultivation. Wang Le's first advancement to the legendary stage happened when she was about the same age as In Jing. However, after the advancement, the effects of the youth rejuvenation reduced her back to the mortal stage. She needed to cultivate and advance to the legendary stage again, but she wouldn't suffer a repeat. However, after Wang Lu advanced to the epic stage, she would experience the effect of youth rejuvenation again. She would still drop to the mortal stage and have to cultivate again. Wang Lu definitely must have taken a liking to the opportunity of Providence Palace by choosing to study at Sunset College. Before the comprehensive test, she will definitely be able to advance back to the legendary stage, Li Xuan said with great certainty. I see. Only then did Zhou Wen realize that Wang Lu actually had such a story. Anyway, I've already informed you. Think about it yourself. Call me if you need anything. Li Xuan rubbed his chest and got up to leave. His invincible Connate divine art life providence and invincible Connate divine art could heal his body quickly, but the pain didn't lessen one bit. After Li Xuan left, Zhou Wen had been thinking about the comprehensive test. If it was only a competition for placement, Zhou Wen definitely wouldn't have wanted to vie for it. However, the items in Providence Palace were quite attractive to him. Even if the other students were to compete, they could only choose one at most. However, Zhou Wen was wondering if he could download Providence Palace to his phone and choose multiple items. To verify this thought, he had to download Providence Palace first. However, if he didn't enter the top 10, he wouldn't have the chance to get there and naturally wouldn't have the chance to download the dungeon. It looks like I'll have to try for this spot. Zhou Wen made up his mind to vie for it, but he wasn't sure if he could get the nomination. The 4 projects tested the students' speed, strength, constitution, and primordial energy respectively. Zhou Wen's 4 attributes were stronger than anyone else of the same level, but compared to those at the legendary stage, he was still very much inferior. Fortunately, the comprehensive test allows the use of companion beasts. It's not like I don't have a chance at all. After Zhou Wen returned to his room, he began crazily grinding again. In the past few days, Zhou Wen's luck had seemed pretty good. When he was grinding Lotus Flower Cave, another fairy monkey companion egg was dropped. Furthermore, its attributes were extremely high. Zhou Wen couldn't bear to use it as food. Finally, he steeled his heart and fused the fairy monkey companion egg with the stone Kylan companion egg. If he could get an excellent grade companion egg with 2 skills, Zhou Wen decided to take the risk to incubate it. However, with a 65% compatibility score, the fusion failed. With a loud bang from the phone, the 2 companion eggs vanished. Although Zhou Wen was already mentally prepared for failure, he still felt depressed when he saw the 2 companion eggs disappear. Gambling is indeed a terrible thing. Zhou Wen sighed and could only continue grinding. Article 121 of 1597.